I was 1 week away from marrying the love of my life, until she destroyed everything with a single text. This is the story of how I survived betrayal, found true love, and learned to protect what matters most. I'm 30 years old now, happily married to my wife Cynthia. But this story isn't about her. It's about a woman who nearly tore my life apart. Let's call her Lena. I was with Lena for 4 years and engaged to her for 2 of those years. She was the kind of person everyone said I was lucky to have. Beautiful, charming, and captivating in any room she entered. On the surface, she seemed flawless. But what I failed to see, blinded by love, was the ugliness hidden beneath that polished exterior. I believed I loved her, or maybe I loved the version of her I thought was real. We were deep into wedding planning. The date was set, the venue secured, and invitations had already been mailed. Everything seemed perfect, until just a week before the wedding. I received a text from her. Not a call, not even a face-to-face conversation, just a cold, distant message. "I can't do this anymore. I'm in love with someone else. I hope you understand." I must have read those words 100 times, each time hoping for more. Surely this wasn't all there was to say after 4 years together. But it was. No explanation, no apology, just an abrupt ending and no closure. I didn't even know how to respond. What could I possibly say? Instead, I just sat there, frozen, my mind in chaos. For the next few days, I stumbled through life in a fog. People kept asking about the wedding, and I couldn't bear to speak. I avoided my mom's calls because I didn't know how to tell her what had happened. Then came the final blow. I discovered who she had left me for. It was a mutual friend, Jake. Someone I had invited into my home multiple times. We had laughed together, shared conversations about life, and bonded over good times. All the while, he had been sneaking behind my back, pursuing Lena. I learned this from another friend, Mike, who thought I deserved to know the truth. The betrayal was more than I could handle. While I was busy planning a life with Lena, she was busy planning hers with someone else. A few days after her text, Lena left me a voicemail filled with apologies. She said she didn't want to hurt me, but had to follow her heart and hoped I would understand. Understand? Understand what? That I was nothing more than a stepping stone in her search for someone else? I blocked her after that. I didn't want to hear any more lies. For months, I felt completely lost. I barely ate, couldn't sleep, and struggled to make sense of my life. My friends tried to cheer me up, urging me to move on, but the pain ran too deep. Everywhere I went, it felt like people were whispering about me, judging me. Strangers who didn't know about the breakup would ask how the wedding planning was going, and I had to explain again and again that it wasn't happening anymore. But time, as they say, heals, slowly. I began to piece myself back together. 2 years later, I met someone new. Her name was Cynthia. She was unlike anyone I'd ever known. No drama, no manipulation, no need for constant attention. Cynthia was calm, genuine, and steady. I could sit in silence with her and still feel understood. We took things slow, and I was cautious because of what had happened with Lena. But Cynthia was patient and kind. After 2 years of dating, I proposed. It wasn't extravagant, just the 2 of us at home, sharing takeout. But it felt perfect. She said yes, and for the first time in a long time, my life felt whole again. A year later, we got married. It was a small, intimate ceremony, and it felt exactly right. Then, out of nowhere, Lena reappeared. I hadn't heard from her in years, and assumed she had moved on, living her life with Jake. I thought I had closed that chapter for good. But one afternoon, while I was washing my car in the driveway, a car pulled up. At first, I didn't recognize the driver, but as she stepped out, I saw her. Lena. She looked exactly the same as she had years ago, impeccably dressed and seemingly flawless. But something was different. Her demeanor was off, and a desperate, almost frantic energy surrounded her. Before she even said a word, I knew why she was there. Still, I wasn't sure if I was ready to hear it. "I need to talk to you," she said, standing in front of me as if she had every right to walk back into my life. I couldn't hold back my irritation. "What do you want?" I snapped, my tone sharper than I intended. She winced but didn't retreat. "Can we sit down, please?" she asked, her voice almost pleading. I made a mistake. I stared at her, trying to decipher whether she was serious. "A mistake?" I repeated, disbelief dripping from my words. "What are you talking about?" Her voice wavered as she continued. I shouldn't have left you. It was the worst decision I've ever made. She paused, struggling to keep herself composed. I wasn't who I thought I was back then. Jake cheated on me, lied to me, and I've been thinking about you. About us. I realize now that walking away was the biggest mistake of my life. A bitter laugh escaped me, one I couldn't suppress. A mistake? I shook my head. You left me through a text for Jake. And now, just because things didn't work out, you think you can come back as if none of it ever happened? She blinked, clearly stunned by my reaction, as if she had expected a warm welcome. I didn't know what I wanted then, she said softly. Confused? I shot back, my anger bubbling to the surface. You were confused while you were sneaking around with Jake behind my back? Her face turned pale, but she pressed on. I'm trying to fix this, she said, her voice filled with desperation. I still love you. I stared at her in utter disbelief. Are you out of your mind? I asked incredulously. I'm married now. I've moved on. You don't get to barge back into my life and try to ruin everything just because yours didn't turn out the way you planned. She stepped closer, her eyes wide and pleading. But you don't love her like you love me. You can't. What we had was special, real. I know you still feel it. My anger boiled over. You need to leave, now. But she didn't budge. I'm not leaving until we talk about this, she insisted, as if we were still negotiating. There's nothing to talk about, I said firmly, my teeth clenched. I was done with you the moment you walked away. Go home. You're not welcome here. For a moment, I thought she might lash out. Her face twisted with rage, and her voice dripped venom as she hissed, You'll regret this. You'll regret choosing her over me. I stepped back and held the door open. Get out of here now, or I'll call the police. With one final glare, she stormed off, her heels clicking angrily against the pavement. She got into her car and sped away, leaving me standing there, hands trembling from the adrenaline. I thought that was the end of it. But a couple of days later, Cynthia, my wife, told me that Lena had called her. She said you made a mistake marrying me, Cynthia said, her voice calm, though her hands shook. She told me you were meant to be with her. My jaw clenched. She called you? I asked, my anger igniting. Cynthia nodded and showed me the texts Lena had sent. They were filled with manipulative nonsense, claims that I was only with Cynthia because I was broken, that I didn't love her the way I had loved Lena. It was delusional. That was my breaking point. The next day, I went to the police and filed for a restraining order. Between the texts, voicemails, and her showing up at my house, there was more than enough evidence. Lena didn't take it well. About a week later, she showed up at my house again, screaming on the porch. She shouted that we had unfinished business and refused to leave. The police came and arrested her for violating the restraining order. She spent the night in jail, and that was the last time I saw her. Since then, life has been peaceful. Cynthia and I are far stronger than ever, and despite everything, we have come out on the other side intact. But there's still a small part of me that's angry. Angry not just at Lena, but at myself for ever giving her so much control over my life. So that's my story, everyone. People can be incredibly selfish, and sometimes it takes years for their true nature to really emerge. When it does, you have to protect what matters most to your life. I did, and I'm not looking back for a second. Kindly let me know your thoughts about my story, and please do not forget to subscribe to this channel as they help share our experiences.